There was certainly an element of making my grandfather proud and honouring him by taking part in the award that has been so much of his life's work. And I definitely hope that I have made him proud.
He was born a month early, barely clinging to life, and in that fragile, chaotic moment, something shifted inside the royal bloodline that no one is talking about out loud. Because what if the quietest child, the one nobody expected to matter, was secretly being positioned for something far bigger all along? What if the real power move didn't come from Prince William or even King Charles III, but from a silent decision made by Queen Elizabeth II herself years before anyone realized the game had already changed? Think about it. A premature birth, emergency surgery, a father, Prince Edward, thousands of miles away in Mauritius, doctors whispering doubts, survival not guaranteed. That's not just a birth story, that's a beginning wrapped in tension, almost like fate itself paused, then chose her anyway. And now, 22 years later, that same girl, Lady Louise Mountbatten-Windsor, is suddenly at the center of whispers about inheritance, property, and a decision that insiders claim left even senior royals stunned into silence. Because this isn't just about a cottage. No, this is about access, power, trust, and something deeper, something emotional that money can't buy. She grew up different, not in the glittering spotlight, not drenched in titles and expectations like her cousins. While the world watched Prince William and Catherine Middleton rise, while headlines chased Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, Louise was almost invisible, quiet, grounded, almost strategically overlooked. Raised by Sophie, Countess of Wessex and Prince Edward away from royal chaos, she didn't even realize her own grandmother was the queen. Let that sink in. Imagine growing up calling the most powerful woman in Britain just grandma. Was that innocence accidental or carefully protected? Because insiders say that's exactly what made her different. While others were shaped by cameras, pressure, expectation, Louise was shaped by something else: silence, simplicity, authenticity. And for a woman like Queen Elizabeth II, who spent decades surrounded by people wanting something, that kind of purity stands out like gold in a room full of noise. And then Balmoral, the place where the Queen truly lived, not as a monarch, but as herself. The hills, the rivers, the quiet, the long walks, the private conversations no one ever heard. And here's where it gets unsettling. Because while other grandchildren visited with schedules, entourages, expectations, Louise arrived differently. Walking boots, sketchbook, no agenda, no performance, just presence. And slowly, something changed. They spent time together. Real time. Not staged appearances, not balcony waves. Real, quiet, uninterrupted moments. Sorting through papers, sharing silence, laughing without cameras, building a bond that no one outside those walls fully understood. And this is where the whispers begin. Because multiple insiders have hinted that during those final summers, 2019, 2020, 2021, the Queen made decisions. Private decisions. Decisions that would never be announced, but would ripple through the family long after she was gone. And then came another clue. Prince Philip. When he passed, the question wasn't just who gets what, it was who meant the most. And the answer? It shocked people who thought they understood the hierarchy. Because instead of passing his most personal legacy items to senior figures, he chose Louise. His carriage, his ponies, his passion. Not symbolic gifts, personal ones, intimate ones, the kind that say, you understand me. And she didn't just accept them, she honored them. Carriage driving, competitions, dedication, no royal shortcuts, no special treatment, just effort, consistency, respect for the legacy. That's not coincidence, that's pattern. And patterns reveal intention. Which brings us to a name quietly woven into this story like a shadow behind the scenes: Lord Ivar Mountbatten. Not just a relative, not just a family friend, her godfather. A man deeply familiar with inheritance, estates, and the emotional weight of legacy. A man who understands what it really means to receive something that isn't just property, but history. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Because when you connect all these dots, the quiet upbringing, the Queen's affection, Philip's personal gifts, Ivar's guidance, you start to see something forming, something deliberate, a setup, a positioning, a quiet transfer of trust that didn't need headlines because it was never meant for public debate. And now, suddenly, there's talk of a cottage, a hidden retreat inside Balmoral, sometimes called Wren's Nest, a place so private, so personal, that even within royal circles, it carries weight, not because of its size, but because of what it represents. Because Balmoral isn't like other royal properties. It's not owned by the crown, it's personal, private, the Queen's own, which means she could choose freely who it would go to. And she did. Not to her children, not to the obvious heirs, not to the loudest names in the family. family to Louise, the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one who never asked for it. And that's where the tension starts to build. Because if this was just a simple inheritance, why are people whispering? Why are insiders careful with their words? Why does it feel like something deeper is being hidden behind polite silence? Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about a house at all. Maybe this was about choosing the future without announcing it. And if that's true, then the real question isn't what Louise inherited, it's why and who didn't. And that's where the story stops being quiet and starts becoming uncomfortable. Because when a decision like this is made behind palace walls, it doesn't just reward one person, it silently bypasses others. And in a family where hierarchy is everything, where order, tradition, and expectation define every move, skipping the obvious names isn't just unusual, it's disruptive. Think about it carefully. This wasn't a random cottage in the countryside. This was Balmoral land, personal land, emotional land, the place where Queen Elizabeth II went to escape the very system she ruled. And she chose to pass a piece of that sanctuary, not to the future king, not to the established power players, but to the one person who had never played the game. And suddenly, everything starts to feel different. Because if you rewind the timeline, the clues were always there. The way Louise was quietly included, the way she was trusted with moments others weren't part of, the way she wasn't shaped into a royal role but allowed to remain untouched. That's not neglect, that's protection. Protection from expectation, protection from pressure, and maybe, just maybe, preparation for something no one else was being prepared for. Even Prince William's position in this story adds a strange layer of calm acceptance, because sources suggest he supported this decision, supported it. Think about that. A future king stepping back, allowing a valuable piece of Balmoral to pass to someone outside the immediate line of succession. That's not normal royal behavior. That's awareness. That's recognition of something deeper, something he either understands or chooses not to challenge. And then there's the timing, the idea that this wasn't just an inheritance, but something more symbolic, something tied to the future. The whispers about it being connected to a wedding gift, not necessarily now, but eventually. A foundation, a beginning, a place that could one day become her own private world, just as Balmoral was for the Queen. And that idea, that subtle suggestion, carries weight. Because royal gifts are never just gifts, they are statements, signals, quiet declarations of intention. And here's where the tension tightens. Because if this cottage, this Wren's Nest, is truly meant as a future anchor, then it raises a dangerous question. What role is Louise actually being positioned for? Because she's not a working royal, not officially, not yet, but she's studying at St. Andrews, the same place where Prince William met Catherine Middleton. She's joined military training. She's building discipline, structure, capability. These aren't random choices, these are patterns. And patterns, when repeated quietly over time, become direction. And all of it feels like it's happening just beneath the surface. No announcements, no grand declarations, just small, consistent steps. A gift here, a connection there, a bond strengthened in private, a role slowly forming without ever being named. And the people closest to her, they're watching, guiding, supporting. Lord Ivar Mountbatten isn't just a godfather in name, he's someone who understands legacy in a way few others do. He's seen estates passed down. He's seen the pressure, the responsibility, the silent expectations that come with it. And his presence in Louise's life isn't accidental. It's stabilizing, strategic even, because inheriting something like this isn't simple. It's not just about owning land. It's about maintaining it, preserving it, protecting its meaning. And that requires a certain kind of person. Not the loudest, not the most visible, but the most consistent, the most grounded, the one least likely to turn it into spectacle. And that is exactly what Louise has always been, which brings us back to the most unsettling part of this entire story. Why her? Why the quiet granddaughter? Why the one who worked at a garden center while others stood on palace balconies? Why the one who sat on train floors with a laptop instead of traveling with royal privilege? Why the one who never chased attention but somehow ended up receiving one of the most personal gifts imaginable? Because maybe that's the answer. Maybe the Queen didn't choose her despite her simplicity. Maybe she chose her because of it. And that thought changes everything. Because if the monarchy is evolving, if it's shifting away from spectacle and towards something more controlled, more grounded, more relatable, then someone like Louise becomes incredibly valuable. Not as a headline figure, not as a central icon, but as a stabilizing force. A quiet presence that holds meaning without demanding attention. A secret weapon. And suddenly the narrative flips. Because what looked like invisibility might actually be positioning. What looked like distance from power power might actually be closeness to something more permanent. What looked like an overlooked life might actually be the most carefully protected one. And if that's true, then this inheritance isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning, because once you accept that this wasn't random, that it wasn't just a sentimental gesture, you start to realize something far more intriguing. The queen didn't just leave behind property, she left behind signals, and those signals are only now starting to be understood. So the question lingers heavier than before. Not what Louise inherited, not even why she inherited it, but what comes next. Because somewhere inside Balmoral, in a quiet corner known as Wren's Nest, there's a piece of the queen's world that now belongs to someone who was never meant to stand at the center of it. And yet, here she is, quietly, patiently, holding something others wanted without ever asking for it. And in a family where everything is watched, measured, and controlled, that kind of silence, it doesn't mean nothing. It means everything.